Good morning, students. Welcome back to English 1 class. Today we'll be doing the invention of Vita Wonk. Part 1 we have done. I hope part 1 is clear to you. So just a quick recap of what we have done so far. So we have a person named Mr. Willy Wonka who has already invented a kind of medicine that makes people younger. But something went wrong with that medicine. What went wrong? People went into minus. So they completely disappeared. They became so young that they completely disappeared. And so this invention to make people younger was a total failure for Mr. Willy Wonka. So now he thought of making something which made people older. Yes, so to make people older. So he asked these questions. So as he was thinking about what to do or how to make this medicine to make people older, he began to think. He said, what is the oldest thing in the world? What lives longer than anything else? These questions he began to think because a plan was developing in his mind. Yes, so he had also one helper called Charlie. So he spoke to Charlie and then he talked to Charlie about the various kinds of trees, and he also spoke about one of the oldest trees which lives or which grows for more than 4,000 years old tree, and that was the bristlecone pine which grows in Nevada, USA, and on Wheeler Peak in Nevada in USA. So this tree, that is the bristlecone cone grows there, which is more than 4,000 years old. So he told Charlie that I am going to look for all the old things in the world, and with that I'm going to make a medicine, a syrup to make people older. So he went about searching for old things. Remember the list of old things that we spoke about in the last lesson? I hope you remember those old things. Yes, so please read up on those old things again. There are quite a few old things which he went looking for: an egg, the tail of a horse, then whiskers of a 36-year-old cat, then also a flea, an insect which lived on crumpets. Crumpets is the name of the cat, remember? Then he also got the sap, the juice from this bristlecone pine. He got the juice from the sap or the juice from this 4,000-year-old tree. Then he also got the black teeth of a 97-year-old grimalkin living in a cave. And then he also got the knuckle bones. This is the knuckle bones of a 700-year-old cataloo from Peru. A cataloo is a make-believe animal. We don't know what it is. It is just a fantasy animal. A grimalkin also is a fantasy being or a creature. It does not exist. But in this story, because it is a fantasy story, so he can give any name he wants. No, even Superman, Batman, Iron Man. Are these people real, you think? No, these are all just fantasies made by Marvel Comics. Stan Lee, he is the producer of all these kinds of movies, which are all make-believe, all fantasy movies. And we love to watch those kind of movies, right? So this story also is about that, Mr. Willy Wonka, an imaginary person, imaginary medicine. Yes, so we learned about that, and I hope you finished the comprehension check on page 101. Yes, today we'll continue with part 2. With part 2 we're ending this lesson, but in this video I'm also going to explain the homework that you have to do, so please watch the video till the end. Okay, the homework, I'm going to just discuss the homework lightly, and you will do, I'm sure you can do your homework yourself. Besides this homework, I'm also going to give you 2 non-textual, which is not in the book, 2 questions which you will discuss with your family and write the answers. So I'm going to involve your mummy and daddy. They're going to break their heads. Why is ma'am giving us homework, they will say. But the homework is not for them to write, it's for them to talk about their experiences. And they will tell you their experiences. Based on what they tell you, you will do your homework. Okay, so continue watching the video. Okay. So now I hope the recap that I did in my introductory video is clear of what we have done so far in the lesson. Today we'll move on to part 2, page 101 of your English books. All over the world, Charlie, Mr. Wonka went on. I tracked down every old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them, a hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes while it was sleeping. So he says, he tells Charlie on about how he went about looking for the oldest things in the world. He says, I went all over the world, Charlie. He said, I tracked down means to find, by searching for it. He went here and there looking for all the things that he needed to make his medicine or his syrup, yes, to get older. So he says, I tracked down very old and ancient animals, very, very old animals. He searched for them and he found them, and he took something, a little bit of something from each animal, from each creature. May have been a hair or an eyebrow, you know, the hair above your eyes, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes. This is disgusting, so dirty it is. He went to each animal and from between their toes he scraped out jam. He calls it jam. It is actually dirt. Scrape, you know the meaning of scrape? Scrape is what your mummy does when she's making coconut ka laddu during Bihu. Yes, coconut laddus. What we do with the coconut, we have to scrape and take out the flesh from the coconut. And we use a special kind of knife or a dao, you call it, no, to scrape out the coconut, the flesh, coconut flesh from inside. So this is what he did. He scraped out the jam. He calls it jam. He scraped out whatever was there between the toes. The toes are what you have on your feet. So he scraped from between the toes while the animal or the creature was sleeping. He says, I tracked down the whistle pig. He looked for the whistle pig. It's an animal, a make-believe animal, a fantasy animal. The bobolink, the shrock, the polyfrog, the giant surlik, the stinging slug, and the venomous squircle. He went looking for all these funny kinds of animals. Not a single animal from here is real. So he went looking for all these animals, he says, and he talks about the venomous. Venomous means poisonous, squircle, who can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. From a distance, it can spit out poison, because it is the venomous or the poisonous squircle. It can spit out poison between your eyes. But there's no time to tell you about them all now, Charlie. He says, but I have no time. No, I have no time to talk about all that. I'm very busy. I'm going to make the medicine, he says. Let me just say quickly that in the end, after lots of boiling and bubbling and mixing and testing, he says, I have done a lot of boiling. Boiling is cooking it, no? Bubbling means when bubble form, when you're cooking food, when bubbles form, that is bubbling, and mixing and testing. So he put all these things that he brought from each of these animals. There are so many animals mentioned here. You see, the whistle pig, the bobolink, the shrock, the polyfrog, the giant surlik, the stinging slug, and the venomous squircle. Slug is something like a snail. Okay, so he got something from all of these animals and he put them together, he mixed them together, he cooked them, he bubbled them, and he got some kind of medicine from them. And then he tells Charlie, I don't have time to talk about it because I am busy now. So he did all his cooking, boiling, bubbling, mixing, testing in his inventing room. In my inventing room, he says, I produced one tiny cupful of oily black liquid and gave 4 drops of it to a brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa volunteer to see what happened. So he says he did all this in his inventing room. And after cooking and mixing all the ingredients that he had brought, he produced one tiny cupful. He got only one tiny cup. Cupful means 1 cup, tiny cup, not a big cup, but a small cup of oily black liquid. After cooking all that, he got one oily black liquid, and out of this black liquid, he gave 4 drops of it to a brave 20-year-old. Why brave? Because he was brave enough to take this new medicine. Brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa volunteer. Volunteer is a person who says, I volunteer, I'll take. Nobody forces him, but he volunteers. He says, I'll do it. And so Willy Wonka gave this brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa 4 drops of that oily black liquid. What did happen? Charlie asks. What happened after you gave him those 4 drops? It was fantastic, cried Mr. Wonka. Mr. Wonka cried. Did he cry? No, he said cried here means said very, very happily. He said it was fantastic. The moment he swallowed it, the moment the Oompa Loompa swallowed the medicine or that oily liquid, he began wrinkling and shriveling up all over, and his hair started dropping off, and his teeth started falling out, and before I knew it, he had suddenly become an old fellow of 75. And thus, my dear Charlie, was Vita Wonk invented. He says, you won't believe what happened. The moment he swallowed that oily black liquid, he began wrinkling. Wrinkling comes from the word wrinkles, which old people have. Their skin begins to fold. No, on the face especially, the skin begins to fold. So this Oompa Loompa, a 20-year-old young person, young man, he began wrinkling. His skin became all like wrinkles and shriveling, drying up all over, and his hair began to fall, and his teeth also began to fall, like an old people, hair and teeth fall, isn't it? So this Oompa Loompa's hair and teeth also began to fall, and suddenly he became an old fellow of 75. He became, in a matter of seconds, just in a matter of seconds, few seconds, he became a man of 75. And with this, Mr. Willy Wonka was very happy. He said, and thus, my dear Charlie, was Vita Wonk invented. And that is how Vita Wonk was invented, with the help of all things from animals which he found or tracked down from all over the world. Okay, so this is the invention of Vita Wonk. How Mr. Willy Wonka invented this oily black liquid to make people old. Remember, his first invention to make people younger was a total failure, but this to make people older was a complete success. He was successful in making this oily black liquid to make people older. So this lesson, this story is written by Roald Dahl. Okay, please look up about his biography on the net, on Google his biography, and please write down a short bio sketch about him. And the lesson from which this short lesson has been taken is Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. I hope you watched the movie Mr. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yes, I hope you have watched that. Okay, so I'm also giving you two non-textual questions, and these two questions you will have to discuss the questions with your family members. Okay, in one question you have to talk to the oldest person in your family, and you have to make a list of what she or he did when they were young. How was life for them when they were young? And what you have to do is compare how life is for you now, you know. But you will have to ask your parents how their life was. The oldest person in your family. If it is your grandmother or grandfather, then you speak to them. Don't speak to your parents. If you have no grandmother, no grandfather, then you speak to your father or to your mother, the oldest person in the family, and you ask them about how their life was when they were young. So compare these two. Maybe your father will say, I never used to go outside to play. But you will say, I play outside. Or I don't play outside. Or your father may say, we used to play out, we used to play cricket and football. You will say, I play video games. I watch TV. My father went visiting his family. So all this you will write. Second question is childhood better than adulthood? Even this, because you don't know what adulthood is, so you will discuss this question with your parents before you write your answer. You will say why. Why is childhood better than adulthood, or why is adulthood better than childhood? Okay, these are the two questions that you will write, and I'm also giving you some more working with the text that also you will complete for homework. Okay, so this is working with the text. Question number 1. What trees does Mr. Wonka mention? Remember the first part, he mentioned some trees. What trees? Which tree does he say lives the longest? Very, very easy. Number 2, how long does this tree live? Where can you find it? So all number 1 and number 2 is all linked together. So answers you can write. How many of the old living things can you remember from Mr. Wonka's list? Don't look back at the story. Do you think all these things really exist, or are some of them purely imaginary? Are those things which he mentioned, the old things, are they, do they really exist, or are they just imaginary things or animals, like I told you in the explanation? If you have listened to my explanation, you will come to know whether they are imaginary, fantasy, or they really exist. Number 3. Why does Mr. Wonka collect items from the oldest things? Do you think this is the right way to begin his invention? Do you think he is right in trying to collect all old things to make his invention? Anything can happen. Don't forget, anything can happen in a fantasy, a story which is not true. Okay, anything can happen. Number 4. What happens to the volunteer who swallows 4 drops of the new invention? What is the name of the invention? Remember, Oompa Loompa, he swallowed 4 drops. What happened to him after he swallowed those 4 drops? And what is the name of this invention? Okay, what is the name of the invention? These answers you write down. Very, very simple. So that is why I'm giving you for homework. Very simple answers. Now coming to page 103, this is working with language. What do you call these insects in your language? What do you call a cockroach, a mosquito, a grasshopper, housefly, dragonfly, ant? So these insects, if you don't know the English name of it, you can always ask your parents. Show them the pictures and they will know what the name is. So this homework you write in your copies, you write cockroach, give a dash and write it in your language. Be it Assamese or Hindi or English, whatever language you want to write the answer in, you write. Okay, in your copies. If you want, you can also draw or maybe even paste pictures. That is optional. Drawing and pasting pictures is optional, but writing cockroach, give a dash and write the answer. What do you call it in your language? Okay, so this is also the homework. Now number 2 on page 103, fill in the blanks in the recipe given below with words from the box. In the box you have shred, cooker, times, tomatoes, half, onion and oil. And the food that you're going to make is easy palak dal. So you can even try this recipe out. Palak is available now in the market. Palak English name is spinach. Yes, Popeye eats spinach. So this palak is available, so you can easily make a palak dal. So the ingredients is there. 1, what will you need? The first one, 1 cooker, 1 cup dal, 2 thin green chilies, then dash a teaspoon of red chili powder, 8 small bunches of palak, 2 what? Salt to taste. And down below that we have wash and cut the vegetables and dash the palak. Now dash the palak, this answer you will get it in the yellow box. From shred, cooker, times, tomatoes, half, onion, oil. From there also you will get the words to put here. So what do we do with the palak? Okay, so choose one word from the yellow box. In the picture you cannot see the whole paragraph, but the whole paragraph is there in the book. So complete the whole paragraph in the book itself. Okay. Now if you turn your books to page 106, that is writing task number 1. Make a list of the trees Mr. Wonka mentions. Make a list of all the trees that he mentions. Where do these trees grow? Now you know only about bristlecone pine. Remember, only about that which grows in Wheeler Peak, Nevada, USA. So only that information is given about the bristlecone pine. The information about the other trees mentioned there is not given. So you have to find out from an encyclopedia, write a short paragraph about 2 or 3 of these trees. To make things easier, you choose any 2 trees and you write about them. Yes, you can just Google it. You see the trees mentioned. If you go back to page 100, in the first paragraph, you will have the trees mentioned there. Douglas fir, oak, cedar. These are the 3 trees mentioned there. You choose any of these 2 and Google it. Find out information about them in 2 or 3 sentences and you write the sentences about 2 trees. Okay, there are 4 trees mentioned. Don't take bristlecone pine because information is already given there. Just take the other 2. Now number 2, name some large trees commonly found in your area. Around where you live, there must be one at least old tree. Find out something about them. How old are they? Who planted them? Do birds eat their fruit? And write 2 or 3 sentences about each one of them. Each one of them means you just take one tree. Yes, just take one tree. Maybe a tree in your village home. Maybe your grandparents' home one tree is growing, so you can ask them who planted that tree, how old the tree is, do birds come to live here and eat the fruit. So you can ask that information from your grandparents and you can write all these answers. Okay, so that's all for today, but for the next class I request one of you to at least remind me about this speaking task we have on page 105. This we will do in the live class. So in the next live class we shall do page 105. Okay, using do for emphasis. That I will not give you for homework, that we will do in the live class. So please remind me about that. Okay, and the rest of the homework I have given you, I know it's a lot of homework I have given today, but then I'm also going to give you time. I'll give you at least say 3 days time. 3 days time to finish this homework. You can finish all the homework nicely, draw pictures if you have to draw, and then I shall send you the assignment, and in that assignment in Google Classroom you will send me your homework. After this, continue watching. I'm also sending you a picture of the 2 non-textual questions about which you have to discuss with your parents and write those answers. Okay, so that's all for today. Have a good day. Bye bye.